Every year I come with a different story, and this year I wanted to tell you this story, which is something I've been working closely with Torkild Clemensen at the Copenhagen Business School. So we've been writing a lot on Sociotechnical HCI for the last 12 months. And a lot of my ongoing writings right now, and in fact, I mean, this morning I was writing a little bit about that, are around this topic. The week before last, I attended the European Conference of Information Systems, where I was a panelist on a sociotechnical workshop, and I spoke about sociotechnical HCI. But anyways, without any further ado, I just wanted to kind of tell you a little bit, for those who don't know, where I'm coming from. I have different hats. My main job is in London. I'm a reader. Now they've rebranded us to associate professors, or almost professors, or almost a professor. I'm also a visiting assistant professor at the business IT department at the IT University of Copenhagen. And obviously I'm a proud member of this institute, as you can see there. I'm quite active with UNESCO and the International Federation of Information Processing, where I'm the UK delegate for the HCI Technical Committee. And of course, as you can guess, I chair the Sociotechnical group back in London at the British Computer Society. And I have, as you probably will pick up from this talk, I have a strong interest in international development, and I work a lot in that area, so if you look at some of my papers. So, today's talk, I'll talk a little bit about service design. I guess some of you might know what this is, so I don't want to bore you too much, but I'll probably need to pave the way a little bit. Then I'll introduce you to a network I'm working with, which is the CIRSE network, which is Service Innovation in Resource-Constrained Environments. Then I'll talk about, as the talk progresses, I will talk a bit more theoretically detailed around sociotechnical HCI and human work interaction design. I will then present an ongoing case study I've been working with since last September. Well, actually more than that, for the last year. But I was there in September last year, which is in Alibaug, and I will explain the whole concept of sociotechnical HCI around this case study and give you obviously some insights from this, and obviously some time for questions. So, service design. Some of you might be quite familiar with this. Service design has been going on for many years. In fact, since the early to mid 80s. And service design is really not a field or a discipline. It's more like a practice-driven area that has emerged. It's like a paella, right? It's made of different things. It started in marketing and business management field, but obviously it then become quite popular around, obviously in interaction design. Human-computer interaction has taken a lot of that, especially from the co-design side of things. But the whole point about service design as a practice-driven field, if you want to call it like that, is that it really focuses design not on the production, what it concerns to us, it is really focused not on it shifts away the focus from digital products to digital services. And that's the trick. So moving from this idea that we're designing a product to the idea that we're actually designing a service suddenly opens up a number of perspectives that before were not really that available within what you call, interactive digital design. Of course, we can argue whether the extent to which that is true or not. But so this is one of the main things that make it interesting. The other thing about service design is that it's relatively simple and straightforward to understand, right? So service design. So this is it, right? So that's the service. You break it down in some stages. You have some kind of line of visibility. You have the stuff happening at the front end. You have the stuff happening at the back end. And then along the service process, or the service journey, you have a number of touch points, which is where service designer will focus on and will make decisions on. And the other thing about service design is that, or the key thing that concerns us about service design is that it automatically certifies and empowers the activity of co-design and participatory design as a central activity in the process of service design. So that's what makes service design quite attractive, and has made it very attractive, especially in the public sector. So in the late 90s, early 90s, I mean 2001, 99, 2001, the UK government took a strong mission to digitize public services. So one of the first things that they did, and I was part of that project at the time, was to digitize, to create a portal called direct.gov.uk. And this is a citizen portal where the idea would be that everyone would actually be able to do the normal task of any citizen through that portal. Driving licenses, pay your taxes, claim child benefit, all sorts of things. So, and when they took on board the project, they decided that the best way they could actually achieve that was through following a service design approach. Fast forward 15 years, I've been working and living in Denmark, especially between 2016 and 2017. The Danish government took a strong drive around service design, and in fact, they listed service designer as one of the top priority jobs in Denmark. This has been going on since 2015. Again, they have taken obviously a much more, they have overtaken the UK in a way. Obviously, they're a much smaller country in terms of service design, but in Denmark, you can only receive any official letter, not in paper. You only have, you can receive it only in an email, official email, which is called e-box. So those who have lived in Denmark know what I'm talking about. So, a lot of these initiatives have been driven through that. But as I said, the service design is not a new field. I mean, this is a Harvard Business Review from January, February 1984. So the first archaeological evidence of a service blueprint was in this issue of Harvard Business Review. As you can see at the time, it was a very functionalist, very structuralist, a structural model of not a functional model, but more of a structural model of a service process that had been dissected in order for managers to be able to make decisions about how to make changes to services. But at this stage, there was no real discussion. In 1884, there was no real insights around the co-design or the need to have user experience insights into it. It was simply a management tool, management visualization tool at the time. Of course, it has evolved over the years. So this is Lotus Note, a service design blueprint for help desk support for Lotus Notes. So some of you who are old enough who might have used Lotus Notes in their previous lives. And again, this is, I think this is late 1990s or something like that. Again, the blueprint will still contain the line of visibility, so you have the backstage activities, the front-end activities, and then you will have a representation of all the touch points mapping the different service journey stages. And again, you could even represent, at this stage, you start to represent the emotional states of those who were calling to get help in this phone desk. And what you can see is that the touch point was mainly mediated by telephones. So you can still see that at the time, internet was not that pervasive. Nowadays, I mean, this type of help desk functions are done 90% digitally, and people tend to avoid having to ring, as we all know. So, again, the other thing about service design is that anyone can be a service designer. Okay, so you could argue this is the London Design School will argue that we're all designers. Since the moment we start choosing where we're going to eat as children, how we're going to dress as a child or as a teenager, that makes us technically designers of our own lives. So, so what you're seeing now is that I just came from South Africa. I've been working with the University of Fort Hare, University of Cape Town, Fort Hare in Eastern Cape, and Cape Town in the Cape Peninsula. And I've been working with librarians there and the student support officers in these South African universities. And basically, they just take these tools and they try to use them. So, and they have no design background. But they have been trying to learn to use these tools. They are freely available, I mean, this website, and there are many other websites. But the thing is, and this is the core of my argument here, is, are the cultural assumptions embedded in these tools, methods, approaches, do they actually work? Do they actually make sense when you move to what you will refer to as a global south context, right? And this has been, for me, a research question, not necessarily limited to service design, but to HCI as a whole for the last 18 years. What happens when we take HCI methods, models, approaches, ontologies to cultural spaces that have not created this knowledge? Does it work? How do people appropriate or recreate these approaches? So, and especially, this is in a context where, if you look, I recommend you, if you are into some kind of form of design, and you are students or researchers, you must read this paper, right? From Guardian, because that paper will tell you exactly where are we moving towards in terms of paradigmatic innovation. Where do we stand as designers? And right now, if you look at the different paradigms, moving from a post-war industrial economy to an experience economy, like Coco Chanel, individual experiences, to a knowledge economy, Web 2.0, the ability to co-create, which is where we're mostly sitting in right now. We're now slowly moving towards a transformation economy, which is not only about empowering people to co-create their consumption experiences or co-design them, but doing it ethically. So you might have seen the news over the last 5 years. What's happening to Amazon? What's happening to Facebook? They have been going under attack because of tax avoidance, because of data leakage. You have the Cambridge Analytica scandal. And all these things are happening because we are now moving into that paradigm, the transformation economy. So there is an increased need for ethical accountability in how we design services or products. Yeah? And as you can see, the Guardian and their colleagues, they managed to break it down really well, especially if you look at the people research objective and people research methods, you will see how the user research focus has changed over the last 60, 70 years, whereas we're now of the predominantly favoring, for instance, user-generated knowledge, expert knowledge, behavior monitoring, fitting the product to the individual's need for self-actualization. We're moving from those methods towards fitting the product or the service, in this case, not only to the individual, but also to society and planet. So these perspectives are fundamental. So as we try to move to the global south, and obviously there are also areas in the global north that are in need, like in Mongolia, for instance. The key questions that we have are the following. How can we understand people at the margins without attempting to stereotype? What methods should we use to open up for a sociotechnical design process that genuinely takes into account intrinsic motivations and bottom-up needs? And last but not least, how can we be empathic? How can we actually transfer co-design to the development process or to design process? So these three fundamental questions drive the work I've been coordinating in this network, which is co-funded by British Academy, the Danish government. I'm trying to get some money from Brazil. It's still not happening, but we'll get there. Which is the Serious Innovation, the Serious Network, which is service innovation at the margins in resource-constrained environments. And what we're doing there with a number of colleagues in universities in India, Brazil, UK, South Africa, and Denmark, is we're trying to explore new sociotechnical service design methods, experiences, and knowledge of how to innovate with people at the margins, or at least how to foster innovation, and how can we learn in the ways they innovate. Because some of you might agree with me that one of the most cool, or the coolest innovation examples over the last 10, 15 years have not come from the global north, but they have actually come from the Global South. People get more creative when they are operating under resource-constrained environments. And remember, innovation is not about leading technology, even though normally they are associated, of course, but innovation is about being able to creatively articulate and connect meanings, new meanings, or give new meanings to existing things. Okay, so, I mean, the Nintendo Wii, for instance. If you know the Nintendo Wii controller, do you know how it came about, right? This guy had this idea that hard drives, they used to have an accelerometer in them. And these hard drives in the 90s, if the hard drive fell, the accelerometer would actually had a sensor that it will park the hard drive. So when Nintendo was about to go into bankruptcy, and file for bankruptcy, this engineer realized, oh, this is actually cool. We could use this sensor. What if we move this sensor and we make it into a controller? What if we break the idea of the typical gamer, which is a teenage gamer, and we believe that we can get nanny and dad and the whole family playing together? What if we do that? What if we go for that? So that's innovation. It had nothing to do with the fact that Nintendo was a leading technology company. And in fact, it wasn't. In fact, Nintendo had, the resolution of the Nintendo Wii was quite poor. And the actual technology, hardware technology of the Nintendo Wii compared to Xbox and PlayStation 3, 2 at the time, it was quite poor. But they were actually making money and they sold many more. Why? Because they innovated. They were able to make those connections that are not always easy to see. It's like an epiphany. And lots of those epiphanies happen in the Global South every day, but they don't reach, as Lucy Sugman says, they fail to reach these official discourses of technology development. Okay? And I think with service design, what we're trying to do is, or with this network, what we're trying to do is actually try to make that more visible, explicate those opportunities more within the context of certain case studies. So, I mean, there's lots of objectives we have. I don't want to distract you with them, but again, these are around, the objectives of this network are around reflecting on how sociotechnical services and approaches add value to other existing mechanisms for stakeholder participation, exploring usefulness of these methods in the Global South, facilitating bottom-up driven social open innovation. Then, what are the opportunities in terms of digitalization of service touch points, big data solutions? And of course, what are the implications for policy and research on urban public services and education? So these are some really big objectives. And these are the projects we're working with. So this is in South Africa. So we're trying to, we're working with local academics and librarians and study support officers, especially at the University of Fort Hare in Eastern Cape in South Africa. And we're trying to see how we can design services that will reduce dropout rates of black communities in South Africa. So basically, the Afrikaans dropout rate in South Africa is like 5%. Then when you move to Bantu communities, it's over 50%. So there is a clear digital divide there. All the systems they use have been designed in the UK or the US. So there are systems that produce algorithms that will tell you whether, I use that in London. There's an algorithm and it will tell me, oh, this student has not been attending, he's 32, he's father, single father with children, whatever. So it will give me an algorithm, it will predict whether that student is going to drop out and whether that student needs special attention. So what the South Africans have done, they have bought those licenses for crazy money, but the predictions are obviously failing. Right? And it's because the knowledge embedded in those systems do not really reflect the local realities of, especially of South Africa. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to work with them to instead of thinking in terms of first technology, then the service, we're actually doing the other way around. We're actually, okay, what do we need to do from a service perspective? And we're trying to be as inclusive as we can. And then we work out what type of systems we need. Another different but interesting case study that we're working with, and this is with IIT Madras in Chennai. My colleague Anand at the University of Bradford. So basically, we're looking at the failure of the smart cities in India. Again, similar story. They put the techno first, and they forget about the social. And then the smart cities in India in many ways, have been a big flop, right? And this is the idea. They think about a smart transport, a smart energy in communities that have no water or that have energy interruptions of 5, 6, 7 days. So there's no real, there hasn't been any real discussion. So we're working with IIT Madras and the local government and the city of Chennai to try and introduce service design and see what happens. Okay, so we're examining how the scope for such citywide framing approach excludes particular groups, including women, children, elderly people, and those living in slums. Can service design help? And I recommend you read, if you have an interest in this, I'll share the slides with Elsa. You can read this article from The Guardian, it's quite interesting. And it tells you exactly what you don't need to do if you want to succeed in any type of these projects. It will tell you the whole catalog of failures and the huge waste of money in the Indian government in investing in smart cities in India. And then the other project, still not fully taken off yet, is we're comparing how Brazilians and Danish actually deal with certain type of marginalized citizens. So, but here the focus is on service design, enable innovation with and for people. The managers in this particular case focus on Brazilian road projects in game design for elderly and interact design for Down syndrome children, and how they actually, I kind of keep the text there, but basically both countries do the same. They use a game approach to try and support Down syndrome children, and also surgery does some work as well, a little bit neuro rehabilitation. But in Brazil they do it very differently. In Denmark they do it very differently. In Brazil they are succeeding. In Denmark they have mixed results. In Denmark they have 10 times more resources than in Brazil. So how can you justify that? So we're trying to explore that, and what can we learn from that? So this is an introduction to this network, but now what I want to talk to you about is about sociotechnical human-computer interaction with a flavor, with a service design flavor. But I want you to kind of think about this idea of sociotechnical human-computer interaction, which is this stuff I've been working with, as I said, with Torkel Clemensen for the last 12 months or so, or probably more than that. So what is sociotechnical human-computer interaction? It's all about knowing and reflect, being able to know and reflect on the sociotechnical implications of design decisions. When you make a decision at an interface level, what are the implications for that? Are these sociotechnically valid decisions? Or are you just only looking at the user experience and the usability of it? Okay, so, and this is the core message I'm trying to convey here today. So, more specifically, Sociotechnical HCI should support, in one way, it should address the gap between what we call work analysis and interaction design, okay? Especially the gap between social requirements and affordances of technical design, which is what I just said. Something might be usable, an interface might be usable, but it might not be useful. And I'm not talking about functional requirements. I'm talking about more complex and nuanced work, social, cultural, ethical relations. And I will, as I speak about this case study, it will all become clearer. So, how do you design simple interactions for complex domains? And again, how can you use Sociotechnical HCI to bridge the gap between the development of ICT and organizational social change? An instance of, there are different instances, I'm writing a journal paper on this. There are different forms of Sociotechnical HCI. There are different concepts and theoretical approaches that could be classed as Sociotechnical HCI. The one I've chosen here, and Pedro used to be the working group chair of the Human Work Interaction Design group. And this is this model. So basically, this approach combines knowledge derived from work analysis and knowledge derived from interaction design, and recognizes the influence of environmental and contextual factors in the process of designing interactive systems. And again, it recognizes that this could be done for different theoretical, conceptual models and perspectives. So the trick is that when you are really doing this, if you're only doing this, especially in systems that mediate work, that's computer-supported cooperative work, for instance, usually there is a big risk to forget about this. On the other hand, those who do cognitive work analysis, work domain analysis, or any other work analysis methods, could be a simple ethnography, they can have perhaps a design agenda or a design focus. Even sociotechnical system theory, the classic sociotechnical system theory principles, co-optimization, minimum critical specification, all these kind of key semi-autonomous working groups, all of those key principles from sociotechnical system theory don't really have an agenda to how can I, as a designer, make decisions about how I'm going to put this button here, or how many screens I'm going to have, or how am I going to overload the interface with information or not? Where the project right now, I have a project with Heathrow Airport right now, and it's about automation. Where the problem with Heathrow, for instance, in Heathrow we have millions and millions of pounds of technology. What we want, well, I say we because I'm not working with them as a researcher, but they can have any automation they want. They can have intelligent trolleys if they want to have. They can have intelligent trolleys following you from your car all the way to the airport gate. There are many reasons why that wouldn't work, but that's a sociotechnical consideration. But the key problem they have right now, and we're using this approach, is that where do you draw the line between automation and augmentation of work? Okay? I'll give you some simple reasons. I'm not going to get too technical on this. Heathrow, as a local employer, the biggest employers in West London and the borough, especially the borough of Hounslow, they have a commitment with the local government to maintain a minimum level of employment level in that area, in that part of London. So we're talking about protecting around 6,000 jobs, right? Something like that. That's the whole Heathrow. Now, if they put more automation, what happens? You lose jobs. So they said to me, how do we solve that puzzle? If we put more automation, yes, we're more efficient, we save money, but we compromise service quality. Because if you look at research into service design and automation, there's a direct correlation between automation and poor service. Right? So they have this puzzle, and we're trying to solve it following these type of approaches. We're doing the scenarios, focus groups, etc., etc. But the idea is, where do you draw the line? How much do I automate? How much do humans get involved? How do I make that design? How can actually interactive technology facilitate augmentation or mediation or decision support or autonomous decision? So there isn't an easy framework that you can just follow and do this. Now, if we take this human work interaction design and we go back to Guardian's paradigms, right? Then, hey, that's the youngest audience I've ever had. It's fine. Yeah. If you take Guardian's paradigm, the transformative economy paradigm, and we look at how can HWID, and she used to write about that until you thought it didn't work and you dropped it. Yeah. How does HWID actually connect with the transformative economy paradigm in terms of ethical value exchange? You can see that, for instance, evidence for benefit, which is the top dimension you have there, is how you can apply HWID theories to conceptualize not only interaction at individual level, but also HCI as a global societal, as a way to deal with global and societal issues, with its ethical peace of mind when speaking of HCI. And now this is the context of international development. Then you have, why would it decline? Well, so for instance, there's the risk that HWID could focus too much on functionalities of interfaces and forgetting the social life of humans and equal value distribution, which is the kind of problems I've been talking about. People research objective. The aim with using HWID should include not stereotyping users badly, but executing sociotechnical HCI methods from within the local society context. and designing for planetary sustainability, and so on. And people research methods, HWID analysis should be in context of everything. Now, this, what this means in practice is how can we then innovate together with people at the margins, which is the original thesis I presented. How can we describe uses without attempting to stereotype badly? The example of the failed student retention system in South Africa. There was a stereotypification of higher education students. What sociotechnical HCI methods fit the local society context? And then last but not least, how you can make design sustainable in face of current planetary challenges, such as climate change. Now, all of these questions, I will illustrate how can you use this in the context of a real case study. So, as I said, since last year I've been working with a number of people, not only in Denmark, but also, especially in India. So I've been working with Dr. Singh in the government, the Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute in India, and Dinesh from Tata Consultants Services, and together with all these other people. And actually there's an article published in ACM Interactions. You can actually Google that and you can read the whole article that we published last month, a couple months ago. And this is pictures that actually, photos that I actually took myself. And in this case study, what we actually look is, we went there because these two people, Dinesh and Dr. Singh, they wanted some feedback from us, as, especially from me and Torquil, and Yehuda Joshi from MIT by contacted us, because they wanted us to evaluate the project from an interaction design, social design perspective, right? So they wanted us to go there and have a look, and look at this amazing project that they have been doing for many years, for the last 10, 12 years, and now, and to show us how it's working. So, and this project revolves around fishing. This project revolves around an app, as simple as it sounds. You turn on your app, you get on your boat, you follow the fish, you follow the spot in the map, like Waze or any GPS. Instead of saying, take me to Funchal, or take me to Ealing, it will take you to where the fish is, more or less. In an app, in a low-cost Android phone. It's amazing, right? So, of course, the work behind that app and the knowledge is amazing. So, just to give you an example, an idea of where we were. So, we spent some time in Alibaug, which is part of the state of Maharashtra in India. So it tells you more or less where the Mumbai is not far, even though it took us 4 hours to get there because of the, I mean, normally in a European road it would take us an hour, but because it was part of the post-monsoon, we were there just after the monsoon. All the roads were flooded, and it took us a long time to get there. But anyway, this is the community we visited, fishing community. It's also a seaside resort, and what they have done is they have been working with TCS as part of a wider initiative from the Indian government called M-ITI. And M-ITI is a program of work sponsored by the Indian government, but effectively implemented, realized by Tata Consultants, TCS, which is about supporting agricultural practices in India digitally. How can we put technology, how can technology help farmers and fishers to get more harvest, to get more fish? As simple as that. And that's what M-ITI does. The case we're actually looking at is about fishing, but there are many other cases. So, so these are the screenshots of this app. So, what the app does, it does a few things. It tells you the wind speed, and where's the wind going, the direction of the wind. It tells you the different colors. This is where I think this is, yeah, this is where fish is. So if you see this the thick black lines, that's where the fish is supposed to be. This is tuna. So people go there to get tuna, for instance. But the information that is streamed into this app comes from different sources. It's an algorithm that Dr. Singh, he's a very talented scientist. He's been refining this algorithm for 17 years. So the algorithm takes information from satellite image, because what they do, they look at the color of the sea, and the temperature, and the wind, and then they look at the catch, at the fish catch in the landing centers. So they can actually work an algorithm of where is the fish likely to be based on all those factors. Where the plankton is, you know the plankton? So they can actually, so satellite imagery, they can actually work out where there is more plankton. So according to sea temperature, plankton, wind speed, they can actually predict more or less accurately, especially through a refined algorithm, where is the fish. You have more. This is the landing page of the app. So as you can see, it's quite simple. Wind speed, direction. You can actually look at how big the waves are. All the things that have PFZ is about fishing location information, the weather, and then they just added one called best practices, which still was in development. Again, you have another screen, the thick black lines, also where is fish as well. This is a different type of fish because they only have one for tuna, and they have another one for other fish. Yeah.
So sustainability comes by saying people not to go to it, right?
Not to go there.
Like, if you have
yeah, but that's the argument. That's what I'm trying to get to, right? So that's what I'm trying to get to. There is a dilemma there, right? And so I will tell you. So we went there. Okay, we spent some time there, so you can see some familiar faces. You can see a fellow friend sitting there, talking. Yeah, sweating, like, what am I doing here? And then that's Dr. Singh. That's Dr. Singh, Stefano Valtolina, the Chinese guy working with Tokyo, Changin, something like that. And then obviously these are fishers and fishing societies people. And they were kind of introducing us to the project. But we used this opportunity, and this took place in a Catholic church, by the way. Because they used the Catholic Church for all the focus groups. Because they have been genuinely Tata, CMFIR, the Indian government basically, INCOIS, which is the satellite people, and the fishing societies, they have been effectively co-designing. They have had, in that church, which is seen as a neutral space, and this is an interesting insight, it's a neutral space, they have been there for months and months and months, sitting together and co-designing this app. Okay? Of course, they will not see what we saw. Okay? Because the co-design of the app was actually focused on the interface. And it was more about teaching them how to find the fish, and why the fish is there, and why you shouldn't sail on your boat if the wind and the waves are too high. You shouldn't be sailing on your boat because you could die or you could waste diesel, etc., etc., etc. But so when we were there, we also interviewed some of. Again, you can see obviously us being external people. You know, that we are kind of putting the layout of the room and how we are kind of approached and treated is quite. We're very segregated, but that changed over the course of that day. It changed. That is Dinesh from Tata, and that's Morten from the University of Copenhagen. And then this is at the end of the day. I think the Indian government has a drive for hygiene, because there's a problem with hygiene in India right now. So the president of India has a campaign. So we were asked to hold hands and take this group picture to be sent to the CMFRI. So these are interaction designers from Tata. These experienced people from Tata. Of that, you can see this is me, Torquil. These are our features. Dr. Singh is somewhere around, and this is Morten. And then the next stage, we went to the landing center in Alibaug. Now, it's really hot. It's, you know, so those who are from India or are from India, you know, especially in September, it's really hot and muggy. The amount of fish is amazing. The amount of fish that were landing at the time. Now, there are really interesting things happening that you cannot see in these pictures. Perhaps we can see a little bit. There are different types of boats. We actually go on the boats. So some boats, they just have nets to actually pull the fish. But the small boats can only go not far. But then you have big boats with winches and cranes and double engines, etc., right? But they're all, the owners of those boats are all part of the same fisher associations for Alibaug. So in a way, they all land their fish from that area. They all land it there. You can see the fish. And then they had this, how do you call this? It's called, what's the name? I forgot the name in English. They have these like little buildings where they have ice, where they throw the fish there, but the ice will melt in 6 hours because it's so hot. And so they have to take the fish out. Anyways, it's complex.
Bait.
Huh?
Bait.
No, the actual, when they pull the fish, they need to store it until they work out where to sort it.
Freezer?
Hmm? Yeah, it's like a freezer, but they don't have energy. So all they have is a brick house, and they put lots of ice there that to bring. So it's quite interesting. I mean, they have some energy, but it's not like they can have. And then what we did, we had some meetings with the main fisher association of Alibaug, who are the interface between the actual fishers, who in turn have their own association. But this is the biggest fishing association. So they are given the diesel, the government gives them the diesel. And then they distribute the diesel to the fishers, the fuel, according to how big their boats are. That's what they say, right? And they are like a gatekeeper in this whole project. They are enablers, I would say. This is on day 2 in IIT Mumbai. They had this model of how the M-ITI system works. So it was explaining basically how decisions are made. So you can see the black lines where the fish is, the color of the sea. You can see all the communication paraphernalia. They have a satellite thing that is not represented there. But we did some fact analysis with people, activities, context, technologies. That was on day 2 or 3. And then what we're trying to do is map this, what we call the sociomaterial infrastructure. Look at different stakeholders, different things they do, etc., etc. That's just a preliminary one. Now, if you apply an HWID approach, I'm not developing a full analysis here, but just to give you a taste, what you start doing is you start looking at different dimensions, aspects of different aspects of this social material ensemble or sociotechnical system, if you want to call it. So for instance, from an intelligence perspective, what they had is co-designed visuals and language for easy understanding for illiterate and semi-illiterate features in the side of the actual application. So you see there's a direct positive relation with affordable and accessible app for low-end Android phones, for instance. Now, if you look at the windscreen interface, the way it's been designed, again, is supportive because it allows the features to go or not go. So before they couldn't make that decision in the same ways. They can verify relation between physical conditions and prediction and save distance. So they can actually, because it's also an issue of trust. Now, the other thing in terms of workarounds is that not everyone has an Android app, not everyone has a phone, number 1. Number 2, the app will only work up to, I think it's up to 50 miles because the Earth is round, right? So you lose coverage. So what they do, some of them have radio relays. So someone in the sea, could relay information through radio about what's happening in the app to someone who is like 80 miles or 100 miles offshore. So they also do their own arrangements to make it work. Now, then we see, this is when we start interviewing the actual fishers, not the fishing society leaders, they're just people who fish, especially those who own the small boats. Then you start to see the cracks. You know, it's when you the dust under the carpet. They were saying, well, yeah, it's great, we have a fish location interface, but this information previously, this information had not been available at all, or merely, or was simply an intuition held by individual features. So we would often keep such intuitions or knowledge, local knowledge, to themselves in order not to lose a good catch to someone else. So by introducing this, you are disturbing this very nuanced working arrangements that have been there operating for over 100 years in Alibaug. Because the small fishers will have their own ways and locations where they know there will be the fish, and the big boats will also do the same. But now, when you open up the knowledge of where the fish is, you have the big boats coming to get fish where in some cases where the small boats used to get fish, but also now the small boats can take more risks, because the small boats now can go further. Why? Because obviously, if you know where the fish is, then you can use your diesel more smart. Before, you couldn't just afford to roam and look for the fish. Now you can go straight to where the fish is, and that means that also the small boat is entering into the big boat fishing area. So the irony, as you were picking up, is that this application that is in theory making fishing sustainable, or is making it unsustainable for the very same reason that it's accessible and user-friendly, right? So, and this is where Sociotechnical HCI could actually allow us to identify these things and reflect and do something about it. And this is kind of one of the key messages. So, for instance, in terms of the interface, the wind and the weather advisory info, the Fish Association obviously coordinates and regulates these activities, and include the distribution of this. Of course, it's positive because then they can save diesel. Okay? But again, then we found out that if you have a big boat, you're naturally advantaged because they will give you more diesel, because they look at cylinders and the engine. So if you have a bigger engine or a bigger cylinder, you will get more diesel. But then the bigger boats will save more diesel than the smaller boats anyway, right? Because they are bigger, if that makes sense. Again, I already explained these different fishing technologies and boat sizes. So the other thing is, there's no risk. One of the interviews, I remember, there was a thing about what is the risk, because a big boat can take bigger risks. So for instance, if the wind speed is too high, there's a common advisory to say, don't go there. Now, this is partially true. If you have a big boat with engines and you don't rely on one of these offboard engines, but it's a proper, then you can take more risks. But the actual design of the interface doesn't discriminate between, it doesn't recognize that these fishers have different boats of different sizes. And again, I mean, we could carry on, finding more relations, positive, conflicting, negative. I mean, other key points emerging from the HWID analysis, in a nutshell, is the chairperson of the Alibaug Fisheries Society considered, they felt it was okay to have equal access, and they were happy with that. But then obviously, as I said, it's more likely that the fishers will cluster the same fishing locations. And as I already said, they have accentuated the tension between traditional fishers with boats for one-day trips, and those who have big boats that can afford multi-day trips. And the other thing that the app doesn't do, it doesn't really take account of any coordination. It doesn't coordinate. All it does is give information to the individual fishers. So one of the things they said to me, the fishers, it would be great to know how much is the fish selling in Mumbai, because then when I'm going to sell my fish, I can sell it at the right price. Of course, the people from Tata say, why, there's no technical need for that. But for them it's very important, because what happens is that the middleman will say, I'll give you 50 rupees for a kilo of fish, and they sell the kilo of fish in Mumbai, they sell it for 200 rupees. Yeah? So what they wanted to do, for them to fully trust this type of application, is to actually integrate other type of activities and information that is not just about, they are not just about where the fish is, but where are the other fishermen, which is not too hard to achieve if you use a model like Waze, where you have you can have a GPS shared location platform that you can achieve easily. And also, obviously, obtain more information about the more economical, social dimensions of that. So, I'm coming to I'm kind of closing. Going back to the idea of service design, for ethical value exchange, so what we can learn from that. What I said, despite the intense co-design activities in this church, the absolution places more emphasis on the introduction of a new service and practices than on the support of existing practices and individual features' subjective view of the world and previous knowledge. It's this typical top-down approach. Right? Still, despite the fact that they said, yes, we have co-design. We are user experience people, and I know what co-design is, but they didn't really. And also, there are cultural problems because, and I found that in my own research in Kenya. If you come from, and this research was, and I presented this research here maybe a couple of years ago, Cecilia, who's a Kenyan lady, educated Kenyan lady, she was doing research in Kenya, and just her presence in a usability evaluation protocol, a set of sessions, totally changed the outcome of those sessions. When I removed Cecilia from the session, and I just left them together with no external moderator, as like a participatory, it's called co-discovery. So I removed the figure of the moderator completely. Then the sessions were totally different, and they were able to identify issues with the design of that particular system we were working with at the time. And the same is here. I'm sure that when these co-design workshops were taking place, they saw Dr. Singh, who has a PhD, has been in the Indian Journal of Science, Dinesh from Tata, and the fishers won't be totally transparent about what they need or whether this decision is good or is not good. Because of course they will recognize the efforts, but you know where I'm coming from, right? I mean, that will, in the UK, if you work with a community of fishers in Liverpool or somewhere in Wales, it wouldn't be like that. They will be much more open. But again, so this is interesting. So, the mobile app, unavoidably, I mean, clearly, is a critical touch point that has empowered the fishers rather than regulated the practices, but has not taken into account the wider, more complex service ecology and the stakeholders surrounding fishing practices in Alibaug and the state of Maharashtra. So, service design has concepts and tools that allow you. I could see with the fishers, with Dr. Singh, with Dinesh, with the Indian government. We can draw a service ecology where we can actually come to a joint understanding of what needs to be done. So that's why I think service design could be interesting. And if we think about HWID, human work interaction design, in the context of ethical value exchange, and in the context of service design, you could see, if you remember the three-column diagram, you could see that the service design's backend issues, all the backend issues I've been telling you about, can be seen as the social, human work side of the HWID diagram, and the front-end issues as the technical interaction design side of the HWID. So that's the whole premise. From a sociotechnical perspective, at a higher level, so what we did, we identified a number of gaps in the design features of M-ITI, which were mainly focused on presenting scientific information and usability, but not always in the wider social arrangements of the sociomaterial infrastructure. So features and the practices have been stereotyped, and this is typical of the problems I outlined at the beginning of my talk in the context of M-ITI project. And obviously, it is somewhat of a dilemma that the app may make fishing a less sustainable way of making a living by increasing competition about the fish, because the fishers are now, there are more fishers now, for the very reason that it is useful and useful. So, by way of conclusion, designing for sustainability is a challenge. You really need to have a long-term social material perspective, and even if you have the political will to do it, it's still very difficult for financial, factual, material reasons. The Alibaug Fishers case study, I used it to explore how service design could be adapted through the technical lens of HWID to articulate ethical issues. And of course, I was able to highlight how a focus on the front-end use an experience of the service provided by the app could risk overlooking delicate and tacit social and cultural backend arrangements. And obviously, given the context sensitivity of the HWID framework, you could see that both sides and the interrelationship should thus be considered as the design platform that is executed and valorized from the local context. So that's it. So I did it on time, I think. And this is an Alibaug. This is someone drying the fish. A lady drying the fish in Alibaug. Yes.
Of course.
Yeah.
Jose, thanks very much for your presentation, for your hard work.
Yeah.
There is no doubt that you have a highly experienced team with participants providing this service, which you're doing in India at the moment.
But I'm not doing it. They are doing it. I just came there to see what happened.
Thanks for your time and devotion. You call it, of course, sociotechnical perspectives in HCI. I'm just wondering, and if we can pull this panel, kind of small discussion on this, whether should we call it extinction HCI, perhaps, because of core a couple of things. If you connect the dots, of course, you will be providing a map with location of fisheries, and what this will be doing in the long term is that population of India, which is highly relevant, will be going more and more to those locations. So perhaps it will affect the population of fisheries in those zones.
Yeah. Well, we don't know. I mean, as I said, this is only a snapshot, right? But that's where that was happening as we spoke with them when we were there, and we're still in contact. I think all I'm trying to do here is, in the context of international development or any social development project, or any project, is to bring back, is to close the gap between design and sociotechnical understanding of design. That's all. That knowing that designing things in a particular way should only incorporate insights, not only about whether how usable or just experience why this is, or even whether that individual is actually being able to accomplish that task, but it should have a much wider considerate reflection. I mean, you could argue that CSW does this. I mean, there are two conferences from CSW. But I think, from my perspective, from my experience, I think a lot of the work in CSW is highly descriptive, and there's a stronger need to theorize, which is what I'm trying to do with talking. This theorizing. That's why I talk about HWID, or I could talk about cognitive work analysis and this type of things. And I was in this information system conference a couple of years ago, and then the keynote said, well, it was talking about system theory, saying that is the theoretical lens, when you talk about HCI as an extension of HCI, I mean, this could be seen through a CSW lens, or it could be seen as through an information system lens, or occupational psychology lens.
Sure. Yeah. But in the same time, do you have a marine biologist by any chance?
A what?
A marine biologist. Do you have it?
A male?
Marine biologist. Anybody who is concerned with ocean preservation, United Nations.
Yeah. If I know anyone.
If you have it in your team.
Yeah, it's Dr. Singh.
Okay.
The CMFRI, Central Marine Fisheries Research Institute.
So the sustainability comes from the, if I get it correctly, you provide more diesel to more sea vessels.
Well, you use, okay, the diesel is subsidized by the Indian government, right? So they need to make sure they make good use of that diesel. Okay? So these societies are, they regulate. There's also the Port Authority. So they control the catch, because they can also issue non-fishing note. They can say issue a non-fishing note. So they might ban fishing for a few weeks if they consider that for different reasons. It could be weather, it could be sustainability reason, it could be So in that system, there are regulatory elements, agents in that system. But as you say, as you notice, the actual goal of the app sometimes is in contradiction with some of the regulatory goals of the entire sociotechnical system. Now, this is not new. From a service design perspective, where you see many organizations move from a product-driven vision to a service-driven vision, right? So they say, oh, we do service design now, we're service-driven, blah, 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 blah. But the reality is that in the back end, you see many organizations, they still are they are product-driven. Their business models are still not compatible with the front end they're trying to implement, right? This is to some extent, it's an example of that. When you have a lot of focus at the height of working in the front end, but not really looking carefully at your back end and looking for this coherence, alignment, right? I mean, this in the 1940s, when they introduced semi-automatic weaving looms in India, in Hyderabad. These British, that was just after the war. The British owners of the factories were saying, well, why, we introduced this machinery and now the productivity, instead of going down, instead of going up, it's going down. It is now all mechanized. And it had to do with that it was introduced with having a clear understanding of the division of labor in those factories. And again, it's similar. So they introduced technology, they introduced this automation without having a clear understanding of the back end. And they realized that they not only had to design the technical side of that factory, but also the social side. So what they did, the Tavistock Institute of Human Relations, which is like the founders of sociotechnical thinking in the functionalist tradition, what they did is they redesigned the roles in the factory. So before they had 8 different roles in the production line. So specialized 8 production roles. So if the bobbin gaiter or the whatever gaiter would fall ill, there was no one in that line that could replace him. So that was because they were highly specialized, because they were trained to do this, and that this is it. If that person wasn't there, it would. So what Tavistock did, and this is occupational psychology, what they did is they reduced the roles from 8 to 2. So you have the senior and the junior for role A and role B. So they had a semi-autonomous working team that could actually make decisions. And then the productivity started to go up, because then you had, instead of having one coordinator looking at, it was like 7 or 8 teams, you had one coordinator only looking at 2 teams that were intercoordinated by 2 other teams. So it become more efficient. So that's typical sociotechnical thinking, right? And again, it's to do with alignment and coherence between backend and front end, in this particular example, between backend and front end. But again, the question remains, it's always very hard to make a fully informed decision as a designer from at a sociotechnical level, organizational level, cultural. It's very difficult. Because, Donald Norman, he was here when he had a chat with him. You were those of you who were here last year. What did he say?
Be happy.
Yeah, well, that was after a few years. But what did?
Focus on the problems.
Huh?
Focus on problems.
Yeah, focus on the problems. The idea that you are like HCI, no, forget about HCI. I mean, and what he was trying to say is this: is about how can you then be useful to contribute solving problems as a multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary team of people, right? And it's because it's a recognition that I cannot save the world with HCI. You need software engineers, you need sensor engineers, you need Dr. Singh, you need Dinesh, you need different people to solve problems, right? And this is what he was saying, that in San Diego his labs were no longer about HCI, but they had a health lab or a whatever lab, and then you had different type of. But obviously, unfortunately, academia, despite what Don said, academia we're still like our hats, right?
Once they became aware of that contradiction of giving more information about what the fish are, in the long term it might lead to extinction, or did they change something about it? Were they willing to do something like trying to find the app or a balance that would help them in a way regulate and control, but also guarantee that in the long term they would still have fish?
Yeah, so, and this is where the other more regulatory mechanisms start to kick in. But politically, it's not difficult. The thing is that, yes, I mean, they're trying to do something about it. I haven't spoken with them in a couple of months, but they're trying to do something about it. But it's not with the technology. The very limited thing is the whole decision set. So it's allowing new features into the line to have new licensed features. But India is quite very relaxed, so you can have no licensed features as well. And sometimes it's not that easy to regulate who's a licensed feature, who's not licensed. And then politically, they cannot be seen to be stopping these people from making a living, right? Okay. So it's delicate. It's delicate. Politically, it's very delicate.
So they're trying to start the talks around that.
Yeah, yeah, and there are discussions about it. But on the other hand, what they will say to me is that these thick black lines you see in the, these are kilometers long. So it's like let's see. So that those suffering this one, yeah. So he said that these are quite big strips, and they said that it's not like
at the moment
a small. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so, but obviously we warned them and they know this, and we picked it up immediately because obviously I think when we interviewed the fishers, it was more than Torquil, me, Shangan, and Stefano. We were well, it was not an interview; it was just chatting, and they were like gossiping with us a little bit. They say it's great in many ways. It's changed. It's really revolutionized a lot of the work that they do, especially because they have become more efficient and they save diesel and they get more fish. But then you have generated other social labor problems among them. Because of this, it's generated more competition, long-term less sustainable fishing. So it's, yeah. And again, I think that this type of problems, you find them in different guises and different forms in Sub-Saharan Africa or in Latin America, again. But yeah, so I guess in summary, I think it's quite interesting. There's 2 articles on this. There's this is one that Morley wrote in that I invite you to. It's actually quite well written, which is this one. It's, am I connected? Well, basically, go for look for ACM interactions. It should load one day. If you look at the major issue, actually, the landing page of ACM interactions, I have a blog. If you enter the blog, there's a link to those articles. One of the articles is the Alibaug story. And then there's a new one, the Springer, which is me with Torquil, a chapter of that as well. And yeah, so if you have more interest, and then you can see some more references. Good.
We should discuss this. We should continue this. Yeah. I find this personally very dangerous. I will.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Still on the issue of sustainability.
Yeah.
We know that fossil fuel is like bad for the marine world, like fishes are included. So don't you think it would be like wise to minimize the amount of boats that we send to the fish, to go and look for the fish?
Yeah. So that's what they're trying to do, but it's politically difficult to do, right? You don't want to upset them. They don't have, it's not that easy. Then you can just shut it down like a system, like a computer system.
Okay. The thing is, how about you don't shut it down instead of like let's say we take like 3 boats, big boats, and then the small boats, like people who are using the small boats, they can go, and maybe market the product somewhere else, because we talked about, they catch the fish and then they have to go and buy and sell the fish.
Yeah.
So instead of like, they should join like one association whereby they have like different departments whereby they can still keep jobs of people who are working.
Yeah, well, exactly. And these are the problems. These are the problems that you need to really solve through genuine participatory co-design, bringing different stakeholders together. I mean, there are ways. The thing is that there is the will to do it, and the ability for them to do it, right? I think it's always easy to, because when you do like user journeys or consumer journeys or service journeys with service design, you can very easily represent how the consumers feel, the service users feel, and then everyone chips in, they're able to contribute, and then you can break some barriers. But so I'll give you an example. In Venezuela, the problem of, Venezuela is now a big disaster, but when I used to live there, my country, I used to live very close to the city center, and there used to be lots of street sellers, right? Selling anything right by the curb. And then there was always, and then there were every 3-4 years there were mayoral elections. Okay, so obviously when we were nearing Christmas and the mayoral election, the government will just allow the street sellers to sell whatever they wanted. They could open up a stall even at the entrance of the main entrance of the metro stations, and they will not be chased by police, because obviously there was a political interest to get the vote of the street sellers from the mayor, from the mayor who wanted to be re-elected. And then when he won the election, then the police will come and will swipe the street sellers, and they will disappear for a few months, and they will slowly come back again. Because he understood they were also important for the local economy and to avoid other major problems. So what I'm trying to say is that when we are making decisions around technology, how do you deploy technology, how do you design technology, these are decisions that are deeply socially, politically, culturally embedded. So if you go there, then that's me. There's a link that this is written with Nimi and this is the field trips that I coordinated in Interact. But at the end of this article, which I wrote with Nimi, you can see Morden wrote this. So you get this is the previous issue of Interactions, because now there's a new one just was out a few days ago. And in there you will see the more nuanced arguments. I think Morden is much better at writing than me. That's why so he puts it quite nicely. And then there is another paper that is referenced there. Once it loads, I'm not sure why it's so slow. But anyways, so have a look if you find it interesting. There's a similar example in Cape Town at the ICT4D group at the University of Cape Town. I came across a very similar initiative from the local government. They're also using an app to find fish in Cape Peninsula. And they have similar problems. But the problem is how they put all the information in small screen. It's a very practical problem. But anyways, any more questions? Good. Thank you for that.
Concluding.
Okay, yes.
If I may allow myself,
yeah, sure.
I'm spending field works working very closely with marine biologists, and very honored and appreciating this fact that I can be there, study citations, and get to know their patterns. And what I learned is that there is a United Nations Sustainable Development Goal 14, life below water, for which all of your authors are fully aware of, for sure. I'm positive. And it speaks about, of course, pollution coming from diesel, noise pollution, direct collisions, and so on. There are so many challenges there, and we can think of very, very, we should be thinking more of very, how to say, very careful in designing, allowing, because it seems like we are allowing ourselves to design something which maybe there is no need. At the bottom line.
So where is this? Sorry, I missed where is this?
With the observatory of
okay.
I collaborate closely with them, but I'm HCI also. My bottom line is that it seems like we are again producing something that is questionable whether there is really a need for it.
Yeah.
Because most experienced fishermen will always lead you to the fish.
Yeah.
And then the question is, do you really need to provide this technology?
Yeah.
Maybe sustainable technology
Yeah.
is providing solar panel powered boat which will go slowly to those locations.
Yeah.
I'm just very concerned whether are we throwing more junk, like John Tucker is saying, or are we really contributing to it? And at the end, if this really goes out of those boundaries of our egocentric thinking of the life below the water, Elon Musk is taking us to Mars within 10 years. Maybe with this we will be needed to go there in 5 years. I don't know. The bottom line is we need to be really careful and not to play the role of God.
Yeah. And I mean, if you can count, I wrote an article, a journal with Lisa Desmond at the ICA journal about ICT. I mean, you can count with your fingers the number of ICT for projects that have been really successful. And those who have been successful are projects that have been totally bottom up and intrinsically motivated. This is not fully, to some extent it is intrinsically motivated. I mean, the opposite, the very best example is one laptop per child disaster with Negro Ponte. He was parachuting laptops to kids in the middle of the Namibian, the Namibian savannah, hoping that they would use it. I mean, that's total. But I mean, you have really good examples like M-PESA or M-PESA, the mobile payment system in South Africa, Kenya, Botswana, and how that was really came from them and from the needs of these people, and we succeeded. And it's a simple technology, M-PESA. And then it was adopted in Europe, which is interesting. In Denmark, it's quite popular. It's called mobile pay. Do you have mobile pay here in Portugal? You pay with your phone, and it's like a QR. Very simple. It's not like Apple Pay. No. Yeah, but anyways, so it's not, it's very slow loading, but in there there's also an article that I wrote with Torkel. But anyways, yeah. Since I have your attention, the thing is that the internet is really slow for some reason. There's next year, in May, I'm chairing the HCI track at the IFIP 9.4 conference in Tanzania, in Dar es Salaam. It's the 9.4, IFIP 9.4 is, if you know, this conference has been going on for years and it's about computer systems for development. So let's see if I can. Are you familiar with IFIP 9.4? Yeah, Tanzania. Oh, it's coming now. Nice. So this is the implications of computing Liverpool. So there are different tracks. So the full paper submission is on the 3rd of September, so if you want to submit. And then the tracks are here. And I am chairing, where is it? Southern? Yeah, sorry. With Rahima in Uganda, Rita, she's now in Canada, and myself. So it's a Southern Driven HCI. So again, it happens just after Kai, but I'm not going to Kai. I'd rather going to Glasgow or rather go to Tanzania. But yeah. So please bear this in mind. The papers from this conference have a really high impact. It's a very important conference within what you call the ICT4D community. And I really pushed to have this HCI track there. So please consider it if you are into that. And I'm involved in something else. And I'm also chairing the HCI track at the ESIS conference in Uppsala, European Conference on Information System, the HCI. So if you cannot afford to go that far, you can go to Uppsala. Not as exciting as Dar es Salaam, but also I think it'll be interesting. Good. Thanks.